Hey, I'm RJ Murdoch with T3 TV. That's Tech, Tips, and Tricks. And today, we're going to show you some tech. This is the Autopod Plus. You know, we've seen cameras being used on a jib or a crane, you know, to kind of give it an elevated position. This is actually a vertical robotic pedestal. So you can mount your PTZ camera, like the PTZ Optic Move 4K here, or your Bird Dog, or your Canon, your Panasonic, on top of this robotic pedestal, and it'll raise it up from anywhere from 2.5 feet to 5.5 feet, or it'll raise it from 4.5 feet up to 10 feet. All depends on the configuration you set it up. And the Plus is actually for IP control. So now you can control this, not necessarily manually, but also using a Stream Deck with companion software, or even a PTZ controller, just to be able to take care of the vertical up and down. You can even program your streaming software, like I have vMix, to be able to go ahead and pre-position it into different positions. So we're going to cover all that and more. So let's get right to it. All right, so we've got ahead and opened up the case. You've got two layers to this thing. This first layer has the base, has some extra cables, has the manual foot pedals for up and down. And if we take off the next layer here, we have the two poles, the Polecams, as well as controllers and power supply for the Polecam, some of the powers, as well as a ball head for other professional cameras. So let's go ahead and start trying to build this up. We're going to start off by pulling out the stand. Now the stand does have adjustable legs on the bottom, so that you can go ahead and adjust it based on your surface. And it's got this really nice looking lock system here. I'm going to take off the second layer, put this off to the side, and we're going to grab the first leg of the pedestal. It really doesn't make a difference which one you choose first. They're both about the same. It's just that you have to make sure that you input to the controller itself, whether it's the first leg, leg 1, or leg 2, with these this little 6-pin there. So you've got your mounting right there. We're just going to go ahead and click it into the mount right here. May have to do a little more pulling out adjustment here. There we go. And then we'll lock that into place just by turning that little knob. And we have the first leg. Now this is roughly, let's just say about my knee height. So I would say about 2.5 feet. So this would be all you would need if you were just doing the like a sitting, standing type of camera position, so that when, let's say you have a talk show, you can have your camera mounted right on top here, and you're right there pretty much around the seated level, and then you can raise this up when they stand up, so you can catch them on the standing level. So this is the first one. We're going to go ahead and take the second one and reposition the camera here so you can see the full length, but for right now, just for connecting it, same concept. I do have the lock on this side, only because I want to keep these connectors on here to show you. So we're going to do the same thing as before, is clip this in and then screw it down to lock it down, and now we have the second level here. All right, as you can see, I've got the second leg up right here, and this is probably right around my chest level. I'm about 6 foot tall, so this is right around, I would say, 4.5 feet. So you'd use the second one if you were basically kind of working more on a stage, and you've got, let's say if you're on a concert, you've got just level right here for the singer, musician, and then you can raise it up and try to get the rest of the band or get an audience shot. We're going to go ahead and attach this camera to this using the mount. Now this is a same type of locking mechanism as the two legs. I added my own little arc type of mounting here that I use on all my PTZ cameras. So that way I could just kind of clip them in and out without having to pull it apart. We're just going to adjust that same way as before, where we're just tightening down the lock mechanism. Then we'll go ahead and take the camera and we'll go ahead and mount that on here. So we got the PTZ camera. I've got that same little mounting over here, universal mount that I can use. And we're just going to go ahead and slide that on there, click it into place. And there we go. So now you see this is probably right about my eye level. So this would be a good for any sort of standing hosted commentator. If you're in sports, you got your commentators, then you can then kind of zoom up there and get the rest of the crowd or get some of the game action. So this is kind of a nice height, pretty much right there at eye level. And now we're going to go ahead and plug everything in. All right, so what we're going to focus on now is we're going to go ahead and connect both of these legs, leg number 1, leg number 2, to the leg controller, also known as the receiver for the IP. And it has a leg 1, leg 2, and power. I will note that you have 2 power supplies for 2 different units here. You have your controller unit, and then you have your legs power and controller unit right here. So you have to be very careful with the power supply you choose, because one of them is 24 volts. The other one is more standard 12 volts. Now the 12 volt is for the IP controller. The 24 volt is for this, but however, they have the same number of pins. It's a 4-pin power supply. So you mix them up, you can screw things up. So my recommendation is perhaps maybe putting some colored tape on either one of these, so that that way you're matching, or even putting a label on this is power supply for the leg controller as compared to power supply for the IP controller. All right, so that being said, let's start things off by connecting the 6-pin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to the leg. So this is leg number 1. There are 2 of these cables, and sometimes the cables and the controller may not be next to each other. So if you're running this from behind a curtain, behind a stage platform, I would recommend, and this is what I did over here, is I have these little blue XLR color identifiers, rings that I have since I'm a sound guide. And then that way, if you're trying to figure out which one is backstage, goes to which one, you just take the blue and plug it into your leg 1, which is the blue. So I did the same thing with the second leg here, and I chose yellow in this case. I'm just going to go ahead and connect the leg 2 to leg 2. Now this is important, and you need to make sure if you're only using one leg, only use the plug for leg 1, not leg 2. So if you're just going to have this one mount by itself, that's it. That's all you need to do. And now let's go ahead and connect the power to it. And we'll go ahead and plug that in. I'm going to turn this around so that you can see some of the light action. And let's go ahead and plug in some power here. And you shall see the power light comes on and it's ready to go. Now what we need to do is actually connect the Ethernet connection to the actual network that we have set up for this IP network. And then this will be ready, and these will light up when we do that. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and just do that anyway. So we're going to set up this green cable to be our Ethernet leg controller. And now that that's connected, we see that we have power, data, and a link. So it's all pretty much kind of working, ready to go. All right, so I've actually turned this camera around so that you can see the connection over here. It's on the same side as the leg 2 connection over here. And the reason I wanted to tell you that is that we're going to go ahead and connect, at the moment, we're just going to go ahead and use this with NDI, so we won't worry about the SDI cable. But if we connect it, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and connect an SDI cable anyway, just so that we can show what it's like for, in this case, let's call it cable management for lack of any other better word. So this thing's going to be moving up and down, and these cables are going to kind of dangle, and you got to make sure that you provide enough slack so that when the second leg goes up, you know, this thing's going to go up to right about here. So you want to make sure you have nothing obstructing the cables here, but also you don't want these unsightly cables all over the place. Actually, I would also use a black cable just for concealment wise, but this is for identification purposes. So what the kit also comes, which I thought was very clever, were these plastic clips. Now this is for cable management. So we can go ahead and take this clip and then clip this on to, let's say, the very top right here, so that you can kind of keep that. And then for the leg number 2, you can do the same thing and clip this on right here. And now, at least when it goes up and down, it's going to stay closer to the pod itself, the Autopod. And then, of course, there's a third one that you could put down on the bottom if you want, just keep it kind of straight. So we would do that. So now when we go up and down, these cables will be a little bit more closer to the Autopod itself. All right, so before we get to the actual IP controller, I wanted to show you 2 things. One, I would use some sandbags. I have 4 of them here kind of laid across to add a little bit more support. These are the lighter weight. The yellow ones I have are much heavier. And also, we were talking about the cable management before. You want to make sure that your cables are free to be able to move up. So you want to have it clear, not underneath any bags or any other cables. Keep your cables down here as free as possible so that when it rises up and down, you're not going to have any issues at all. All right, now that we've got cable management and pod stabilization taken care of, let's talk about the the actual controller itself. This is for IP as well as manual control with a foot pedal here. So you can go up and down, and you would connect that to this. As I'd mentioned before, this has the same 4-pin connection for power as the leg controller, but this is a 12 volt. So make sure that you don't confuse and put the 24 volt leg controller power supply in here. Again, my recommendation, put some type of color on your connector and on some electrical tape, colored electrical tape on the bottom, so that you're matching, because you may not always be you helping you set this up, and if you have an assistant, they may inadvertently. So protect your gear, make sure people understand what's going on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the power supply. The first thing you'll see is that it lights up. This little boot up logo goes on, but then you have a menu that will come up, and it's going to tell us a couple of things right off the bat. First off, we have no connection, so there's no IP connection. So we would have to go ahead and make sure we have an IP connection first. Before we do that, we have the up-down for the manual control. So let's go ahead and unzip tie this. We're going to plug in down with down, up. These are labeled up and up as well. Now that we have the data connection going and we have the manual control, we notice that we can't zoom it up or down. We can't raise or lower the pedestal. And that's because our indicator up on the top line before said we were not connected. But now that we have the IP connection, now it's telling us uncalibrated. So you have to make a calibration before you use it every time. And if I scroll down to about 5 levels down, I press Run Calibration, you see that there's some slight movement as it's adjusting where the endpoint is. Now everything is ready to go. So if I now take the manual control, you can see that the camera is rising up and it's being able to come on down. And you've got about, maybe about 8 feet worth of play here. So you can actually, and then since this is an IP controller, it's actually sending an IP data to the leg controller itself. You can actually have this positioned anywhere backstage and manually be able to just go up and down while you're working other things. So now your feet are in control of the pedestal here. So now let's talk about IP control using the network connection in one of my controllers over here. Okay, so we've got the Autopod Plus physically all connected. And everything's in place, the camera's in place on it, the wires are all connected, the leg controller is connected to the IP controller over here, which allows us to manually make changes utilizing the up and down of the foot pedal. But now let's talk about controlling the Autopod Plus utilizing IP controllers such as the Stream Deck here with BitFocus Companion. We can also talk about utilizing the vMix here on the laptop, where we can go ahead and configure the outputs so that we can control it through one of the PTZ settings on vMix. And let's go ahead and talk about utilizing it to go ahead and be controlled by a PTZ controller, such as this PTZ Optics SuperJoy, which has been kind of a mainstay for me. So we'll talk about all 3 of those. Let's go ahead and first start about how to utilize the Stream Deck with BitFocus Companion. So let's go take a look at that. Okay, so this is the BitFocus Companion running on my Stream Deck. If your Stream Deck app is already running, you need to turn that off so that you can go ahead and run your BitFocus Companion. We've already started it, so it is running and running on the same IP as the Autopod Plus. So if I bring up my web browser, in this case we launched the GUI, I had done that earlier. You see on this that I have several connections that I've made. And what you do is you go to Add Connection over here, and you would scroll down, or in this case we could just go ahead and punch in. And what I want you to do is punch in PanelPod. Let's see if I just add the pod to it. Pod, there we go. So as soon as I add that, you could see right here that I have the Panasonic PanelPod. So utilize that by adding that, and I have done that over here. So you see it on the bottom, and you can see that right there with that green dot that it has connected. And if I click on it, you can see that the IP address is for the receiver, which is in that .10 subnet and 199. And then when you go to buttons, in this case I put everything on page 99. Since I'm using the smaller version of the Stream Deck, instead of this is the XL, I'm using just the standard, and that has 5 columns and 3 rows. And I went ahead and set up these buttons. I go to the button preset over here, I go to presets, and I pull up PanelPod, and then this is where I can pull out the up down, which is all we're utilizing is the up down. So I drag that over into each one of these. I also set it up so that if I wanted to speed it up or slow it down by 25%, it would do that. They also had 3 more buttons here for setting the speed to preset high, mid, or slow speed. So as you can see over here now, that if I press this, and this shot that you're seeing is right on the, let's go over here, we're going to raise it up, and you can see that the pedestal is rising, it is going down. We could change the speed, we could speed it up, and it's going to tell you how much speed it is on the indicator right here. If we go to high speed, it sets it at 40, so it will go faster. If we set it at low speed, it sets it at 10. So now it'll go a lot smoother on a slower up and down. And that's how easy it is to go ahead and set it up with the BitFocus. So now let's talk about trying to control it through vMix here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the vMix on my display. Right now you're going to look at my full desktop here. If I go down to, let's say this is where I've got my NDI for the camera. If I go to my settings here and I go to PTZ controller, in this case I have it set up for the 2.204, which is what I have my camera set up. But if I change that IP address, I can go ahead and make that so that it is 199, and I can connect. And then before we even get out of here, since this camera is connected to the panel pod, you'll see as I pull it up, now it's going to go up and it's going to go down, and that's utilizing the Sony Visca over IP. If you've ever used vMix before, with this camera over here, I can create a virtual input and it'll remember all of these settings and where it was. So now I have an input number 6 that is exactly this. If I go ahead and raise this up, and I'm going to use my other controller right now to go ahead and tilt the camera down. A little bit. I'm going to make that another input, so I'm going to add another input here. So you could actually stack some of these inputs, so now you can see if I click on, let's see, I'm going to see where my 2 inputs are. Let's go ahead and minimize this audio, we don't need that. We have 2 presets right here. This was the first one. If I click on that, it's going to lower it to where it was, and I could potentially also set this up so that it would also adjust another virtual, let's do a virtual input of this. So if I go one more time, let's do this. So can I do this and this at the same time? And can I go here and here at the same time? All right, sort of works. I haven't really had a chance to really play it around. In my case, I just used it for this graduation where I just wanted to use it to control it to go up and down, and I had it preset. And then I used my PTZ controllers to control where the camera is. So at the very least, you know, you can go ahead and set up so that you can do an up and down to a specific height and a specific speed that you could set for it to go up and down. Let's talk about the IP controller. And this one, it was a bit tricky for me. It took a little while to finally figure out how to set it up on this IP. So we're going to talk about that. You could see this is a PTZ Optics SuperJoy. I'm going to go ahead and configure camera 1 to be able to control the up and down of the PTZ. Okay, so this is the display that's telling me what my cameras to set up. I'm going to set up camera number 1 to go ahead and access the receiver. So I'm going to hit setup. I'm on the same network, the .10 subnet, as the Autopod Plus. I'm going to the channel 1, camera 1 setting over here. I'm going to hit setup, and you can see the first option is for network device. I'm going to hit enter. This is all part of group 1. So we're going to hit 1 here. This is going to be my channel 1, so I'm going to hit channel 1 over here. We got Visca UDP Sony. Now that's the one you want to get. So we'll enter that. We'll enter the IP address for the receiver, 192.168.10.199. In this case, this is what I have it set up. And we're going to hit enter. And for the Sony UDP, you don't have to put a protocol, but a port, but it does because it's this default, and we'll show you what that's like here in a second here. So I'm going to go to camera 1, which is what I have now for the Autopod Plus, and then I'm going to be able to drive it up, and drive it down. So I will specify this with the PTZ Optics SuperJoy here. Any changes you make for a particular channel, you've got to re-hit that channel again so it loads all the new information. This took me days to figure out as I was trying to figure out all the other configurations, which protocol to use, because nothing was happening because you'd have to update the channel each time you make a change. So that's the one caveat about using the SuperJoy that you need to make sure you keep in mind. So we talked about using this the Sony Visca UDP protocol on the SuperJoy. And if you do so, you don't need to know the port. But in case you do need to know the port, in this case, I went ahead and went on the computer here and punched in the IP address for the web interface for the controller here. And I came up with this for channel 1. This is my camera setup. And you can see the .10.199. And that's the standard port, the 52381 for the Visca UDP Sony protocol. So if you're working with another controller and you need to specify what the port actually is, that's the one you're going to have to use. So now that we've got 3 ways of controlling it, actually in this case 4, I'm utilizing the manual aspect of utilizing the foot pedestal, so manually being able to set that somewhere nearby, probably within 10 feet with the cable that's connected to, well, it depends on the 10 feet from the IP controller, and that can be connected over the network, so you can pretty much place it anywhere you want to. So you don't have to be physically within distance as long as you have a network connected to your Autopod Plus. You can also set it up for a Stream Deck. In this case, this is what I used for graduation, where the Autopod was in front of the stage on a gym floor for the basketball stadium that graduation was taking place at. And from way the back of the house up on top, I was able to control the up and down and actually also do some preset utilizing the vMix over here with the preset. So I can go ahead and set it up so it would go in a particular height. In this case, the height required for when the shake and take of the passing out of the diplomas for each of the individual candidates that had graduated. And then another one to bring it back down. And then finally, through some research and some work here in the studio, I was finally able to get the IP controller to go ahead and control it up and down. So overall, a successful integration of the Autopod Plus with the controllers that I had available and for the shots. Let's take a minute and talk about some of the use I've been able to utilize this Autopod Plus for. There you have it, the Autopod Plus. This robotic pedestal delivered more than I expected. I was able to use it for a graduation, which is why I was particularly interested in this, because we wanted to have a camera in the front of the stage so that we could rise it up and actually be able to see up close when the graduate was able to take the diploma from the president of the college. And then also be able to lower it so that everybody in the audience can be able to view the stage while the speeches were going on and benedictions and valedictorians and all that stuff. And during that graduation, which was unexpected, I was able to utilize the Autopod right there in the front of the stage and be able to bring it up just high enough above most of the seated students so that I can go ahead and do a close-up of one student that was being recognized for her accomplishments of being able to graduate with dealing with a lot of other adversities and family issues and stuff like that. So we had the 4K move. I was able to push in, get a nice close-up headshot, and that was up on the iMag for everyone to see. And it just blew everybody away. So being able to have that ability to be able to go ahead and zoom into an audience just made it even more worthwhile for the graduation. But as a bonus, I got a chance to try it one more time at a parade. And normally, I do this parade twice a year for Christmas and for this Pirate Festival that happens in May. I was able to utilize this on the stage. I was able to clamp it to the stage so it was nice and secure. And then be able to get the host, while they were on stage, commentating about all the floats that went by, but be able to turn it around. And when a float came by, especially one of the pirate ships, a lot of times they're very high up, and it's hard to see from a ground level the people that are on the top of the deck of these pirate boat floats. But with this, I was able to raise it up above the stage, 10 feet above the stage, and get a little bit, not necessarily eye level, but at least a little bit more of a better angle, and also be able to look down into some of the floats to actually check out the participants in the parade from that aspect of it. So from that perspective, normally, this has been used for most of the times concerts. For usually, if you rent one of these, rental houses usually give them for long tours with bands to be able to add another dimension for the big screens of an iMac, where a camera can come up and get a close-up of one of the artists as they're performing. In my case, I went a little bit more rural, I guess, being able to utilize it for a parade. I would love to take this to the Macy Day Parade and be able to put my VR camera on there to get a nice little perspective of that. But also for graduations or other stage events where you don't want to have anything in front of the camera, or in front of the stage, I should say, to go ahead and block the view of the people in the audience. But when the right moment comes and they want to look at a screen where they can see a close-up, you can bring that camera up utilizing the Autopod Plus, and there you have it. So between the graduations, the parade, this thing worked out really well for my case. I haven't had a chance to do a concert yet. I would love to. Now let's talk about real-world cost. The unit itself is about $8,000 US dollars, 58,000 pounds. It's based out of, the company Polecam is based out of England. However, they do have them available for rental. They're kind of hard to find, but there was one house in New Jersey, AMV, I believe, All Mobile Video, that rents it. I haven't had a chance to get word back from them about what the rental rate is, so check the description below, and I'll have that information on there, plus their contact information. So if the rental is affordable within the shoot that you want to do, I would say go for it. Having the ability to control something from IP control from a network anywhere where you place it, it's great. And if you happen to be an institution that does a lot of video events, especially stage events, it might be a worthwhile investment, because I've seen this not only used for cameras, as it is with this 4K Move camera, but I've also seen it used on an award ceremony where they actually had the award rise up, not necessarily out of the floor, but in front of the stage, so that the MC can pick it up and then pass it on to the winner of the award. I've also seen teleprompters also be able to be raised up and used with it and then brought out of the place. So there's multiple uses. It adds a fourth dimension to your PTZ pan, tilt, zoom, and now you've got elevation to it. So I highly recommend it. If you get an opportunity to rent one, go for it. If you're an institution that can see it being used for more than 4 times a year, definitely worthwhile. And I haven't even talked about sports yet. Sports would be phenomenal, where you can actually have this pretty much right there in front of the field. You have it lowered so you can have your on-camera commentators, but also be able to bring it up and see the action, turn it around, check out eye level in the audience. Lots of potential use for this. So from T3 TV, Tech Tips and Tricks, this bit of tech gives 2 thumbs up from me, and I highly recommend it. Do it. And by the way, if you like what you see here, please do subscribe and leave any comments or questions below so I can go ahead and provide you answers for that. Or if you have a piece of gear that you'd like me to review, especially in a real world aspect of it, my niche is multi-camera live production. I will definitely put it through the, whatever you want to call it, the works. So, okay, this is RJ Murdoch, and I am signing off. Thanks for watching.